This is Breaking Pressure, the voice of soccer reform, a podcast built to confront the broken U.S. youth soccer system and expose the pressures that are crushing real development. We're here to call it out: the pay-to-play platforms, the closed leagues, the politics gatekeeping talent, and erasing the voices of good coaches and local clubs. At our core, we believe in something better, one where players are developed to be brave, creative leaders. Inspired by the Kansas City Legends model and the training Legends for Life philosophy, this is where the next wave begins. Welcome to Breaking Pressure. Let's rebuild the game. Welcome back to Breaking Pressure. I'm your host, Brad Casper. The clap is a call out to Andrew Clifton, who is invited to come join us and have some fun with us on Breaking Pressure in the morning. I will tell you, I will start this episode, which is now episode 5, called Pressure, Dust or Diamonds, and we're going to spend a great deal of time digging into the different types of pressure that we find both on the field and off the field, and how we can work to help kids navigate different types of pressure. But before I do, again, I have to share with everyone, I pulled an Andrew Clifton. We recorded our show on Saturday morning at 4:30 in the morning.
It was so good.
It was a really, really good show, and it was still on Pressure, Diamonds or Dust. So this is take 2 because it did not download properly. So as I said last time, we're learning more and more about how to get all of these videos out with good quality, and we appreciate everybody's patience. Also, unbeknownst, my lovely wife Sarah joined with me in the studio, shared our podcast on Facebook yesterday, so we had quite a bit of feedback and a tremendous amount of love and support from our community, which was just wonderful to see, and we truly are grateful and appreciated. And I hope people will join us on this journey as we simply try to make the game better, try to help those that are involved in the game, and really shed some light on some dark spaces that we think is youth sports these days. So before I kick us off, Sarah, anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I am very humbled. Thank you
Yeah,
for,
no, yeah.
yeah, no, can ChatGPT edit me out there? It's so early. I got to get my brain fired up. Okay. Yes, I'm going to say yes. I have something to say. I am truly humbled, by the outpour of support. I don't usually post a lot on social media. And so it was a very proud moment actually when I did, because I was listening to some of the shows, and I was going back and I said, there's really good content within here. And I think there's so much more that we can grow from. And I think it'll benefit people from across sports and just kind of across life. And that's really my mission. I'm hoping to really help people, players, parents, kind of realize all the pressures that we're under. And I think that's kind of goes back to the name. And I'll just kind of call us out. We're under a lot of pressure. So after releasing that on Facebook, I was like, wait a minute.
Now we got to wake up and we'll make some more videos.
We have to do this. I'm like, I'm not going to cuss, but I was like, man, stuff just got real. I said, we got to get up and start producing. But it wasn't like a bad pressure, and I think that's what we have to really think about. This pressure feels like a privilege, and I think when we start unpacking what pressure is, it's really knowing the difference when we're creating something because we feel like it is a privilege, or are we creating something that becomes toxicity and harmful to ourselves, to our development, to our mental health. So I think that's
perfect. So let's get into it. Today we're going to get straight
Cool,
at the
we're
heart.
on.
We're going to get straight at the heart of what our name is: pressure. Pressure is everywhere in soccer, from the player about to take a penalty, to the coach who's deciding who starts, to the parents on the sideline, even the ref making a difficult call. But not all pressure is the same. There's pressure that sharpens us, that forms diamonds, and then there's pressure that crushes us, that shuts us down. Today we're talking about the difference and why Learning to handle pressure the right way can change everything. Pressure itself isn't bad. In fact, we need it. Pressure can push us beyond what we thought possible. Think about weightlifting. No resistance, no growth. Same thing in soccer. A player who's never challenged won't improve. Pressure is part of development. But here's the catch. When pressure is rooted in fear, fear of failure, fear of embarrassment, fear of letting others down, that's when it becomes toxic. Instead of pushing players forward, it paralyzes them. Instead of forming diamonds, it creates dust. Sarah,
And
floor's yours.
yeah, I love that intro, Brad, and it got me fired up again back from like our Saturday morning, podcast. And I did this bit, and again, these are things I should probably stay away from because I'm not very good at, but I'm gonna try it again, because I actually had to research like how to make diamonds because it's actually a statement that we use quite a bit because in our environment at the Legends, we put our players under constant pressure, not just within the boxes and the fast pace, like high intensity games and the expectation of skills, all of those things, but also as coaches, we have expectations for our players. And so that together, I mean, we're constantly developing them under these like really high intensity, high temperature environments. And so I quickly Googled how to make a diamond, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I went through the analogy in my head, and it broke down the steps. And so quickly, as I looked at it, I said, okay, what are these steps? And the first step, it said, you have to really get a unique piece, a very unique small piece, which is referenced as the seed. When I looked at that immediately, I was like, okay, the seed is the player. And then the second step was you have to have carbon-rich material. So within that carbon-rich material, I said, okay, that has to be the coaches, right? What are they fostering within that player? And then the third step, it said a special chamber, this that supports the high pressure. So this is extreme heats. And within this environment, this high temperature environment, this will help like the player, the seed kind of foster. And I said, okay, those are the boxes. That's the Legends environment. That's, the box. And then the fourth step is the growth. And this is when carbon melts and it crystallizes around the seed, which then starts defining like the diamond. It starts forming into a newer, larger, beautiful piece of the diamond. And I said, oh, that makes sense because that's when the coaches really start fading out and the players really start shining. And so it was just like a little fun bit that I did. Again, I should I'm not a diamond scientist. I should stay away from these things. But I thought it was like a really kind of like cute correlation of, and I made purpose out of it. I mean, meaning out of it, when we put these kids in that environment. And I have to say, I mean, we're under, even to this morning, we got here late. Brad wouldn't wake up this morning. And so we're under pressure even today. Brad has to get off to a trip. He's leaving town into Boston. And so as he's transitioning out, then the pressure kind of sits with me a little bit more, in the mornings of getting kids to activities like managing life, getting to all the soccer practices and, getting our kids to their events, all of that stuff. So we're naturally kind of sitting in this pressure chamber right now. And I feel it in my body. I feel kind of like the heat or the intensity, if you will. So I'm not necessarily sitting relaxed, but I think that's going to be a good piece that we can lead into with these kids, that are under pressure quite a bit.
Well, and let's take a step back and talk about why we brought pressure up as episode number 5. Over the weekend, in a typical fashion, we had a series of soccer games, but really, we had one game Friday night with our rising team and
they're 2015.
2015 girls, and we showed up, Friday night after work, 6:30, and we're getting ready to play. Next thing you know, our first half, they just came out really sluggish, and we're kind of looking at each other a bit frustrated, saying, oh my gosh, all of this good work that they've been doing over the last several weeks and months, and then we come out and we just kind of, we weren't playing to the level that we expect of them or we've grown to expect of them. And, it's at halftime, we had a conversation around, how do we get them motivated, refocused, recentered, working through the situation. And then second half, yeah, they did a lot better. But after the game, we had some fun conversations with some of the parents, and we appreciate those that stick around. We enjoy having those connections and digging into topics that are, soccer, life, things along those lines.
Yeah, we had fun.
It's very healthy.
Yeah, we had fun.
And then you fast forward, and next thing you know, we're waking up at 4:30 in the morning saying, man, pressure can be quite a big impact, especially on a child. And we started to think about, uh, as these kids are transitioning in their day, they're coming from school for 7 hours. They're probably had a quick snack. They probably have things from all week of practices, of school, of parents and pressures all around them. Then they show up at a soccer field at 6:30, and we as parents, as coaches, we say, yeah, now go perform, go perfect. Say it again.
Please perform perfect.
Please perform perfect. I'm going to get a shirt made out of that so I can remember it. Please perfect perform. And
you got it wrong. It's okay. Go ahead. We have grace.
Thank you. But and then we expect these, them to be able to step into the environment and just be able to flip a switch. But that's a learned behavior. And even as adults, you were mentioning it. We're in transition today, and we're still dealing with our pressures on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think one thing that you jumped over that I want to highlight is after that game, or actually it was halftime, the first start of the game, yes, very sluggish. We were trying to figure out what was going on. We're watching the play, just kind of really came out very sloppy and almost chaotic. They were almost playing like very panicky. And then at halftime, one of the things that I think really helped, Brad, is you sat everybody down and you said, everybody sit down, just sit, take a minute. And then before we started talking, you said, I want everybody to do this. Take a big, deep breath. And it was funny because all the kids do funny, deep breaths.
I was doing it for myself, though, so I didn't lose my mind while I was going on my halftime rant.
Well, I mean, but that's the translation of it, right? Like we need it as adults, but they also need it as kids. But how many times are we really slowing down and helping them transition to one event after another, or really getting them honed in and like focused? We show up and we're like, all right, right to skills, right to do whatever it is that's asked of you. And I think, that moment of breath was really important because when we're under pressure, just like myself today, I shared it within my own body. I feel kind of that tension. I'm really not breathing well. I'm breathing very shallow, because there is this underlining pressure that if I could relax into it a little bit more, or our players, then we can respond very different. And I think that moment helped them because the second half, they played fantastic. I mean, they came out and were like, okay, now they're a little bit more relaxed, and they're connecting their ripping skills. We're getting opportunities attacking, and then it started flowing. Now, we tied the game, I think 0-0. Right. So nothing, we didn't get a result out of it, if you will, but we got a lesson within there. And for us as coaches, I think the lesson, and this is what led up to the 4 a.m. podcast, because we truly both woke up and I called it like our awakening. Like we both woke up at 4 o'clock and we were starting this dialogue. And I was so happy that you were awake because one, my brain was already, when you have solitude, it allows you to kind of think and work through all of these thoughts, especially in the middle of the night, because our subconscious is always paying attention. We're always.
She used to lay there and just look at me in awe while I slept, and now it's she's poking at me and saying, "Hey, wake up!
We got a podcast.
We got something to talk about."
Yeah. So I did. I said, "Are you awake?" And he's like, "Yes." I'm like, "Okay, can we start talking?" And it was probably 15 minutes into our conversation, and he said, "Let's go record." I said, "Yeah, let's do it." So we were here. It was dark outside. It was super early, and it was truly our awakening. And I think what came from that is like the ways that we can help these kids work through their pressures. Even as adults, sometimes we don't do it very well and we don't manage it very well, but other times we can compartmentalize our life and really work through and kind of separate all the pressures that we have. And if we just look at just in our life, the pressures that we talked about it, work is a pressure. Finances is a pressure. Our families and meeting expectations are pressures. Those are social lives, keeping up with our social lives, maintenance on our home. Brad just worked really hard on our house all weekend, and so maintenance on our home and kind of all of those things that just kind of lie underneath the surface. As adults, we can work through, but then we forget that these are just kids. 2015, I mean, they're fourth graders and fifth graders, and so they're just kids. And so as they show up, we were talking about like, okay, what are like the pressures? One, Brad and I are we are blessed, like we have a stable environment, but not all children, kind of have those experiences. Maybe it's a stable home, but maybe it's a one parent home, or yes, what's going on at school? Like our kids are doing a ton of stuff at school. Helen just went out for student council and she was feeling a tremendous amount of pressure giving her speech and not knowing if she was going to make student council. Sophia's doing cross country. They have all of their assignments. Yeah, and then you go home, you take them home, then they have their family dynamics, what's going on within their own home, what's going on within their siblings. There's so much there that I think we have to understand for these kids, that when we turn on and say, okay, now go play a soccer game, we're not helping them, I think, in a lot of ways, really foster that transition. Because I think what we saw, Brad, on the field is, if I look out, we had kids that weren't really present. There were kids that were disappearing. There were kids that engaged for moments and then they were gone. They stopped playing. And I think that's what actually happens in our brain when we're experiencing a tremendous amount of stress. We have to look at how do we deal with that stress in our life, and then, helping kids foster and separate out, from that stress to stay present. Because yeah, what do we do as adults right now? It's probably a lot of social media. There's a lot of ways where we check out and disconnect and numb from the pressures of our life. And then you see it really at younger ages for these kids too, right?
Right. And I think that's a great intro, because at halftime, things could have gone one of two ways, right? We could just get on top of them and push, push, push and create more pressure that becomes more toxic and snowballs. And the next thing you know, the parents are pushing because they're wanting their kids to do their best and perform. But instead, we took a deep breath. We talked about refocusing on what we can control. And there's a difference, right? There's good pressure versus bad pressure. Either way you like it or not, there's pressure. Second half, there's going to be pressure. Life is always going to have pressure. So you can either deal with it in a good way, in a healthy way, and attack it properly, or you can keep pressing and create more of a toxic-like environment. So the difference is, good pressure feels like a challenge, right? We talked about this last time. It feels like a challenge. I can do this. I can push myself. Bad pressure feels like a threat. If I don't do this, I'll be punished or humiliated. Same intensity, totally different impact. So our halftime speech is, if I'm sitting there talking about, hey, bad pressure, if you guys don't do this, you're going to lose the game. Well, who cares, right? We can grow up a little bit and say, this outcome of this game doesn't matter on a Friday night in a Heartland League out at Swope. But what we can do is take this moment and say, hey, let's create good pressure. I know some of you guys are tired. Can we refocus? Can we start thinking about the little things that can have an impact on the game? Like, how do you find a skill within the first two touches every time the ball's on your foot? I want you to play unafraid with those first two touches, because even if you lose the ball, it's okay. Just try. Focus on those two little things. I'm still applying a pressure to try something difficult, but I'm also giving them the freedom to say, if you fail, it's not a big deal. And we can narrow our lens in terms of what we're focusing on to help get them there. And good pressure fuels the creativity and courage and resilience. Bad pressure kills it, right? It kills the joy. It creates anxiety and makes players play smaller. Good pressure comes from love of the game, personal goals, and supportive environments. Bad pressure comes from ego, unrealistic expectations, and fear and judgment. So I threw a lot in there really quickly,
Yeah.
but let's talk about one of the dynamics in the second half that changed. We had a player that came out of goal, because we just rotate our goalies in our league. And Millie was playing out of our defensive side. And all of a sudden, she was just lights out with skill, breaking down players.
Oh, yeah.
And then what's interesting is the joy that she was bringing to the game is contagious.
Yeah.
It's infectious.
Yeah, she was a leader for sure for us in that game. When she came out, she played so calm under pressure. We played her at center back, and she was wildly skillful. And yeah, I mean that rippled out to everyone else on that field.
Well, and we try to do this consistently, right? We were in St. Louis a week or so ago now, and playing in the Scott Gallagher the Cup of Champions, Nike Cup of Champions, which was some really good competition. And throughout these tournaments, like you find these moments of just tremendous leadership that is helping others around them break the pressure. I think the 14s. They had a lot of tough battles. It was a very
Yeah,
defensive-minded weekend where they're learning to try to play at a speed of the game
and a
and a
physicality of the game.
physicality to
Yeah.
stay relevant. But I'll tell you, the girls out of the back in the first couple of games were just solid and doing their thing, keeping them in the game, and I think there was tremendous amounts of growth. Nora in the final, man, I thought she was
Yeah.
just getting pummeled on the outside, but
Yeah.
you could see her confidence growing and growing because every time she got knocked, it was, okay, you're okay. Take a deep breath, get up and go again.
Yeah.
So again, I circle back. You're never going to negate pressures of any game. You're never going to negate the pressures that are in our lives. How we frame, how we think about pressure is really what I think the purpose of this show and podcast is about.
Yeah, and Brad, I love that you started in talking about like the positive sides of pressure, and again, I think it goes back to a lot of things that you we do as coaches that we have control over. And one of the things I think with Nora on our 14s, you did something very special for her, and you helped her identify that. You gave her this warrior award. You kind of gave her this mental toughness award and said, I see you battling, and I know it's really hard, but you got this, and that part of encouragement, I think, just kind of helped her settle in and get that security that all kids need, that like, I'm okay, because we all want that sense of security. And so I think, again, in the coaching aspect, you did something really beautiful for her and helping her kind of settle in. You did the same thing, and I'll use our daughter. When our daughters, they talk a lot. For those that haven't met or spent quality time with them, they talk a lot, and Brad was like, "I don't know what to do with it." And I said, "They're just releasing pressure. Just hold space for them, allow them to vent, allow them to get it out." I said, "Because if not, that's when you see, like, the ripple effect kind of happen of they're gonna combust, right? It's going to turn into dust or fragments of it." And, this is where I'll jump back into, like, maybe the negative side, and we can counter it. I talked about all the pressures that they have before they get onto the soccer field, but I didn't talk about all the pressures that they have on the field, right? Here are the pressures that they have while they're playing games. One, they have their internal dialogue. They already have expectations for themselves. That is already in their internal narrative, like what they want. I have to be the greatest player. I have to be the best, or I can't fail. I can't, whatever those narratives are and the things that you tell yourself, it's already in there. Two, then they have the pressures and expectations of parents. And it's not just their parents, but it's all parents on the sidelines, all bystanders. I mean, yeah, that are watching the game. I mean, they are yelling things throughout this entire game. And I kind of did this joke with you, Brad, last time. I said, can you imagine while you're working at your job and somebody's constantly yelling at you, dictating your every move, or booing you because you got your formula wrong with your mathematical equation wrong, and they're like, "Boo, that was a terrible decision."
Yeah,
Have you ever done math before?
and you framed it with 100 people standing around your desk watching you work, right? And it, you know, being a critic of everything that you're doing. That's what we do on the sidelines at these youth games.
Yeah, and that's the pressure that they feel. I mean, again, we already have that internal critic voice, but you have, yes, 100 people on the sideline. You have your parents, you have the other team, then you have your teammates, right? And for kids at this age, their peer groups are really important. They want a sense of belonging, and they're going to get it through their peers. So the way that teammates talk to each other is critical, because it can truly break somebody down, or it can help and encourage and foster, kind of this growth of the diamond. And we see both on our team. Sometimes the girls that we coach are really hard on each other. They poke fun, they make fun of each other. If they make a mistake, everybody laughs. And it's playful, but there's a fine line that we have to be careful with it, because if not, we don't know how that individual is processing the information. And if they are feeling some sense of like shame, which means I'm not good enough, it's connected to identity, or embarrassment that says, "Oh, I was ashamed. I made a fool of myself, and I don't ever want to do that again. So I'm going to withdraw or pull away." And so that's how we internalize and deal with some of the pressures in our life. And so now they have their teammates and they want to perform. And they also have referees or pressure, right? Referees are calling the game. They're pressure coaches, both coaches on both sides that are yelling things. So they're constantly like in this, and I'm going to separate out. They're in this larger chamber where they're getting heat from everywhere, but is it the right heat that's fostering like the creation of a diamond, right? And that's what I think separates us when we're inside those boxes, is that we're constantly putting pressure on them, but we're fostering like their sense of self and growth within it.
Right. And again, we're not trying to say pressure isn't needed or relevant. We're just trying to help them navigate through the pressure so that they can become better human beings, right? So, and again, when I thought about this, I broke it down by each kind of category, and I started with the players, and I said they feel the pressure to perform, to impress coaches, and to not disappoint parents, which is a big one, right? Myself included, for about a year, my older daughter, every time she'd play on an indoor 4v4 field at Legends facility, which is a really small field, every time she did something, she always looked over at me to see if I was
Yeah.
watching and looking for approval. And so much so, we had a conversation that you don't need to do that. Stop playing for what I think, play for how you think and how you feel, and find your own joy and love for it. So again,
Yeah.
but a lot of that, it comes from when we make mistakes as coaches, we're calling it out. So it takes time to kind of help navigate that. And we tell them this
Yeah.
all the time, that when we yell from the sideline, that's like, we don't yell from a place that we don't like you or we're mad at you. We yell because we're trying to help you get better, and we need you to hear us in an environment where it's hard for you to pay attention and listen.
Yeah.
And so tell them, have that conversation with the kids. I think it's incredibly helpful.
Well,
So go
can I
ahead,
jump in?
please.
Yeah, and I'm gonna clarify, because when I yell, I sound like a crazy person because I realize I have a high-pitched voice and it doesn't carry very well. But I want to bring in, like, our own children, Brad, because we've had long conversations, you and I, about is it in the best interest to coach our own players? And I think one of the roots of that conversation is because kids can't separate out, like, that this is dad coaching them or mom coaching them, or this is their coach coaching them. Like, kids, as we're born, like, we're hardwired for this. We want love, acceptance, and approval, right? We want that sense of belonging. We want that unconditional. And so in a young mind, they're constantly evaluating it from a sense of like, am I pleasing you? Am I worthy of love? Right? That's how they're kind of connecting it, versus we just love you unconditionally. And I had I don't think Sophia would mind me sharing this, because she said she almost wanted to come on the podcast this morning so she can talk about it. But we had a really beautiful moment. We were doing our devotional last night. We do a mother-daughter devotional, and we were doing a devotional, and it was talking about like, how do we pray through like our hardships? And Sophia was trying to look through like what her hardships were in life. And she said, Mom, I think one of my hardships is the pressure that I put on myself. And it's really hard for me because I think that I have to be the best. And and I like to win. And so it's hard for me just to kind of relax. And I said, well, like, mom and dad, we don't care whether you win or lose games. She goes, I know. You always tell me it's just you want me to like learn and grow and have fun. And she was kind of mocking us, but in her own voice, she had something else. And I think we have to probably take responsibility as parents, because sometimes there's unspoken pressures. So she might feel some definite unspoken pressures from us, but our language and what we try to foster is something completely different. And so here's what I told her, as we said our prayer. I said, the end goal, I said, well, we're using our scripture, and I said, you're not going to get into heaven because you won state cup or you won a soccer game or you were the best at something. I said, think about what God is trying to teach us in that lens of like guiding us through our life. And it's who we are as people, right? And she said, yeah, right, Mom. And she laughed and she chuckled. And then we led and went into our prayers. But I think those things are really, really important that we have to understand and kind of embrace for these young kids and really help them get through kind of the pressures that they're experiencing.
Well, and again, whatever your value system is, right? For us, it's God and church. Others, it may be something different. But what I hope you find is when pressure is framed as an opportunity, like go try, go be brave, it's healthy. When it's framed as don't mess up, it's disruptive. So go back to kind of your core values as a person, as a family unit, and make sure that as you're having conversations with your kids, same thing with us as coaches. And again, we have to check our stuff
Yeah.
all the time. We are far from perfect. We are not doing this podcast because we believe that we are doing things above and beyond
No,
what everyone else around us is
it's
doing. That
it,
is not it. It's not an ego trip. I promise you that. I am here to learn. If you have something valuable to say in this podcast, bring it on. I'm not here to challenge things, and we appreciate thought. And I think that this is what's dying within our culture is we no longer value others' opinion. We have our own echo chamber of thoughts, and we don't want to exist outside of it. And so we welcome you to come in and have those difficult conversations. And I shared a story last time about Kobe Bryant. And again, if I can find the link, I'll try to put it in the description. But Kobe had a tremendous interview where he was talking about he was driving to a game with his dad, and he was talking about the pressure that he felt for the game. And his dad had this really pivotal moment in Kobe's life where he said, pretty much, son, I love you no matter what you do on that court. He's like, nothing's going to change that. And it was maybe a moment when Kobe was old enough to maybe really understand what his dad was saying. But the freedom that his father just gave him was, hey, I love you unconditionally. There's nothing that's going to happen in a game in an hour, hour and a half long that's going to change that. And so the pressure that you feel from me is just a pure, hey, I want you to go be your best. Go find your best. And it turned him into one of the most focused athletes we may ever witness in our lifetime. Yeah. And what's interesting, or what I think is very, very sad, is that he passed away at such a young age. I would have loved to see him grow into more wisdom as he got older and see what he really thought of how he played, how he approached life. And I think that there would be some real pros and cons to what he viewed, but tremendous athlete, one that I think we can learn a lot from.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to read his book. I think it's called Mamba, or something along those lines. That's next on my list because, again, I love learning, and I think Brad's, talking about that now. And it's not, we're very, we're trying to stay very humbled in this process. And I hope you can hear like the responsibility that we're taking within ourselves and our accountability. It's not that we are, perfect by any means, but we're just trying to create a voice and an understanding of what we're witnessing and seeing in our own life, first and foremost, and then also in all the lives around us. And so if we can put voice in for these children and call it out and use ourselves for that, or for coaches and saying, hey, how can we check our own ego and slow down a little bit, help them connect to us first before they jump onto the field. And this is where we talked about, Matt Iverson does a really great job, even though he puts a tremendous, he is a heat pressure chamber for sure, when he's coaching, but he always checks in with his players. Even our kids, as they walk by, they have secret handshakes, or he looks at them and he acknowledges who they are and does something very special and unique with each one of them. And I think it helps those kids connect and say, hey, you're here. We're here to play. It's going to be a different amount of pressure, but you're safe, kid. Let's go play.
Well, and we talked about this last time where you and I are thinking through some ways as kids are showing up to practice or to
Yeah,
games, we can
that
check in with them a little bit to
we
make
can do
sure
it
that we
differently.
can, maybe unload some of the pressures that they're feeling from outside of the game and the field and the moment, and then be ready to find a better headspace to go be competitive and grow.
Yeah.
And again, I think Matt Iverson does a tremendous job of this if he realizes that this is what it's doing or not. It was almost like an aha moment as we were discussing that. He's just literally looking at each and every kid and saying, I see you, you see me, let's go do this together. And it doesn't always mean that they're ready to play and show up, but
He's connecting.
there's connection.
Yeah.
And he knows his players deeply, and he gets the most out of his players because his environments are wildly filled with pressure.
Yeah.
But again, pressure isn't a bad thing. That's not what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
The other thing that I throw out is, I think as we think about our players or as a parent, whatever lens, if we can take a step back and just realize everyone has different pressures.
Yeah.
Coaches, like that game on Friday night where we should have probably won by 2 or 3 goals, doesn't feel good, right? We feel the pressure to want to compete, to want to win. We want to have the pressure we feel the pressure to, show that we're good coaches and we can do this. And there's ego that sneaks into that. And you have to really fight it back to make sure that we're doing the best for development. And we'll talk more about what we do for development because we switch all of our players halfway through the year. Half of them play defense for half the year or a season, and then we switch. Our offensive players become defensive players. Our defensive players become offensive players. Yeah. That's hard to do when you want to go in there and put your best foot forward and play players at their best position to go try to win games. So again, we are all feeling pressures very differently. Parents, they're spending money on something that is, hopefully trying to foster a love of the game. But, when you're spending the money and you have your kid and traveling all over the town, there was a comedian on the other day, and we've got to bring it on and just play the clip. Because he was talking about how the parents at younger ages, he said his parents really failed him because they weren't willing to drive away every weekend to go, support his baseball career. That, we never won a game, but you should have been driving me all over town. You should have been giving up the 2 days out of the week that you have off to really foster my career and help me grow into baseball. And it was just such a lovely, funny
sentiment
of and it called out a lot of the irony within youth sports.
Yeah, and I think parents do feel a lot of that pressure, and I am not on the parent sideline. And when I do sit on a parent sideline, you will find me like at the corner flag by myself. I do my own strategies of removal because listen, anxiety is contagious. It is the most contagious emotion that we can feel. And we may not even know like why we're feeling it. But I think parents feel that anxiety like on the sideline. And I think as parents are yelling or dictating, whether it's at the ref, whether it's at, their own child, the play, or whatever it is that's going on, even if they're yelling, kick it, you are like you're not causing a relaxed state of mind. You're causing a panic. Like they need to be calm in these environments. So the more you're yelling or dictating, shoot it, pass it, kick it. I mean, again, imagine yourself at your job, and then these hundreds of people are standing around you, yelling at you, telling you what to do. You are not going to operate, in a sense, with a calm mind. You are just not. Our brain shifts dramatically when we're under heightened stress. So the more parents can just take a deep breath, relax on the sideline, enjoy your child playing.
Well, and that's a whole nother podcast in itself, right? Because if you go to the professional levels, the decorum from fans at the pro level is just ridiculous these days. And then it moves down to how we behave at youth games. And then your kids see how you behave and coaches behave. And next thing you know, they're yelling at the inappropriately. Like there is a chance to go in there and fix this thing from the core, and that's kind of what we hope we get at. But that again, that's for
maybe we'll save that. But can I call somebody out because I want to call Callie out?
Yeah,
I got a message from Callie, and actually Callie's mom, Christy, and she called me out and she said, 1v1s are not fun, and so I'm going to call Callie out because Callie, what we're doing with you is we are putting you under pressure. and we are making a diamond. You have played amazing, and you are going to shine.
Yeah. I mean, it's what it's all about, right? Put them under pressure consistently and help them get through it. And the reason she doesn't like 1v1s because she didn't name them properly. Just call them fun v funs, and then all will be framed properly. But in all seriousness, 1v1s were designed to create a pressure-filled environment that allow kids to understand and figure out how to work through these pressures that the game that life is going to bring. So we're at the top of the hour, Sarah. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. Here's some final thoughts. So how do we take pressure and make it good? First, we need to normalize it. Kids need to know pressure is part of the game and it's not going away. Second, reframe it. Instead of saying don't mess up, make it go be brave. How can we encourage kids through the moments where pressure exists? Third, model it. Coaches and parents need to show kids that it's okay to handle pressure with courage, not fear. And let's be real. Pressure can still hurt, but if kids learn how to lean into it instead of run from it, that's where growth happens. That's where diamonds are formed. Pressure isn't the enemy. Ego and fear are what turn it toxic. The courage and love of the game turn it into fuel. The question is, what kind of pressure are we creating for the kids in our care? Because at the end of the day, pressure will either make us or break us. And it's on us as parents, as coaches, as players, as referees to choose which one. Thank you all for listening. I'm Brett Casper. Until next time, thanks for listening to Breaking Pressure.